Okay, Shalom. I'm gonna start off where I left off. All those estates and estates erroneously believed to represent the American state and American state citizens, in which were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States citizens, and were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States of America minor, and more recently to the city-state of the United Nations, are revenue without exception to the geographically defined American state and American state citizens, where they shall remain in perpetuity as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. Also, like I said, I never gave anybody permission to transform, deform, impersonate my chosen name, niggas, like a Yah Kadesh. But people have still gone ahead and sent correspondence back to me in all capital letters, and what they do. But even according to this, it's null and void, because they can't do that. So I'm still able to receive it, without any penalty to me, because that's their fraud, not me. I don't have to suffer for what they do. They're the one fraudulent. That's why they don't want to. That's why they trying to make me bow down to codes, because I'm not subject to that. And they refuse to record it because they said they have no authority to record it. That's why I gave them authority, because I'm the one with the authority to allow them to do it. Now I'm recording it live on the record right now too. So all legal, it said, belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. All legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states and American state citizens, are returned to them and their control, free and clear of any debt. So that means when they send these bills, there's no debts. There was no debts anyway, but they just acknowledge it. Once again, all legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states and American state citizens, are returned to them in their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrance, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made in their behalf by officers of foreign officials operating the United States of America minor or the United States city-states falsely, claiming to represent them or have jurisdiction over them. And once again, like I said, I've never, I've given notice that I don't operate any illegal fictions. I've given notice once I've found out what's going on. As I learned, as I know better, I do better. As I know better, that's why I gave notification that I do not operate nor have any access to those things or any cooperation with them, and I told them to destroy those things. And now they're still trying to hold me captive by those things, but I'm free. I've been free, but even these words here letting them know that they're acting in fraud, and they can't hold me accountable for that. We note that the current circumstances is in part the result of a criminal act engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans. Once again, like I said, I'm Hebrew, Yasharite, and of Yahuda. But that term African American is applied, is a legal fiction name applied to the people of the land, who were summarily claimed as chattels back in U.S. debt in the wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against both peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue state amongst the nations of the world. Instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving the rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle this circumstance in favor of the people. Now, you notice when he said in favor of the people, that's in the same paragraph with the so-called African Americans, which appears to agree with the 1828 definition of American, the copper-colored people found here by the Europeans, but now it applied to the descendants of the Europeans. This is just written evidence. This is facts. This is information that anybody can find out. This is not me coming with my own opinions or injections. This is what I'm reading from informational sources. I choose the name Negus Iglagi Yakadesh, but like I said, I'll just use Negus Yakadesh for short, but I still claim the right to Negus Iglagi Yakadesh because Negus Iglagi Yakadesh and Negus Yakadesh is basically the same meaning. And for convenience sake, I accept to be called Negus Yakadesh. Iglagi and Kadesh have the same meaning. So I will use Negus Yakadesh and I will sign or autograph the name Yakadesh in honor of my father, Yahuwah, and I will acknowledge and accept the Washita Cherokee people as being part of my lineage as aboriginal to this land and soil called America today. My mother meaning the aboriginal heritage being the indigenous to this land. Note, these are the same people. The terms Moor, Ethiopian, Indian, Aboriginal, Indigenous, Negro all refer to a natural people known in America Minor as African Americans. Refer to Alabama Senator Beeson on Aborigines. You can find that on YouTube. All inclusive, but for this purpose I will include several certain articles for room's sake. Article 1.1. The American Declaration on the Right of Indigenous People applies to the indigenous people of the Americas. 2. Self-identification as indigenous people will be fundamental criteria for determining whom this declaration applies. The states shall respect the right of such self-identifications as indigenous individually or collectively, in keeping with practices and institutions of each indigenous people. Article 3. Indigenous people have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue. Do that again. Article 3. Indigenous people have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Article 4. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act contrary to the Charter of the Organization of American States and Charter of the United Nations construed as authorizing or encouraging any action which would dismember or impair, totally or in part, the territorial integrity or political unity of sovereign and independent states. Look at the time. Article 5. Full effect and observance of human rights. Indigenous people and persons have the right to full enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms as recognized in the Charter of the United Nations, the Charter of Organization of American States, and international human law. Article 6. Collective rights. Indigenous people have collective rights that are indispensable for their existence, well-being, and integral development as people. In this regard, the states recognize and respect the right of indigenous people to their collective action, to their judicial, social, political, and economic systems or institutions to their own cultures. 2. Profess and practice their spiritual beliefs, to use their own tongues and languages, and to their lands, territories, and resources. States shall promote with full and effective participation of indigenous people the harmonious coexistence of rights and systems of the different populations, groups, and cultures. Article 8. Rights to belonging to the indigenous people. Indigenous persons and communities have the right to belong to one or more indigenous people in accordance with the identity, traditions, customs, and systems of belonging of each people. No discrimination of any kind may arise from the exercise of such right. Article 9. Judicial personality. The states shall recognize fully the judicial personality of the indigenous people, respecting indigenous forms of organization and promoting the full exercise of the rights recognized in this declaration. Article 10. Rejection of assimilation. 1. Indigenous people have the right to maintain, express, and freely develop their cultural identity in all respects, free from any external attempt at assimilation. 2. States shall not carry out, adopt, support, or favor any policy to assimilate the indigenous people to destroy their cultures. Article 11. Protection against genocide. Indigenous people have the right to not be subjected to any form of genocide or attempted to exterminate them. Article 12. Right. Let's see. Article 12 guarantees against racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and other related forms of intolerance. Indigenous people have the right not to be subject to racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and other related forms of intolerance. The state shall adopt the preventive and corrective measures necessary for the full and effective protection of this right. Article 13. Right to cultural identity integrity. Indigenous people have the right to their own cultural identity, integrity, and to their cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, including historic and ancestral heritage, and to the protection, preservation, maintenance, and development of their cultural heritage for their collective continuity, and that their members, and so as to transmit that heritage to future generations. Alright, we'll move on to the next video.